Hi, everybody. Welcome back to episode 4 of my podcast, They're Not Mine. This is a podcast series about life with kids through the eyes of an auntie, amongst other things. And actually, before I get into the podcast, I don't want to just say welcome back. I actually want to say thank you. I appreciate you following this. I have never done a podcast before. I've had no training in storytelling whatsoever. And at times through the production of these episodes, I've actually questioned, what the heck am I doing in front of a camera? I have no right to be here. But these are stories that I have developed for probably over 19 years. And while I put them on a website a few years ago, I really wanted to bring these stories to the next level. So thank you. Bear with me as I'm learning this art of podcast storytelling, and I really hope you go the distance with me. Let's kick off with a previously on. There are 4 siblings, blonde, redhead. Trina's had Annie, and she stays over with me. She no longer has to sleep on the floor because I have invested in a cot. And the last episode I spent sharing more about my maternal grandparents, Noni and Pop. They had an amazing impact on my life, and they really showed me the importance of family. It was October, and Annie was nearly 7 months old, and she and I were sitting on my bedroom floor doing makeup. I was, the kid wasn't. We were all getting ready for a really big day. You see, Bindi was getting married. The whole family was ecstatic, and we were really excited about what the day was going to hold. I remember I watched Bindi fall in love with Sam, and remembering Bindi's sibling number 3, gregarious, never drank coffee. I remember the first time I met Sam, and it was in a wine bar in Paddington, Sydney, and we were celebrating Bindi's birthday, and naturally Sam was on the guest list. I made a point of going up and introducing myself and chatting to him. And, I watched him, and he was lovely to chat with. He was quiet. He was kind of taken in the room and just observing. A bit like I would imagine Keanu Reeves would be like if I ever got the chance to meet him. Sam was attentive to Bindi that night, and he was patient. In fact, I gave him the nickname BP. The nickname came from a TV commercial that was done in Australia from the 80s for BP Australia, British Petroleum Australia. And the tagline was BP, the quiet achiever. And Sam was, and he got the girl. So here we were, all getting ready for the big event. Bindi and Sam were getting married. We were so excited. Trina and Brett and Annie were staying with me. So I had a full house, and I was really happy to have everybody there. I'd showered, and I handed over both bathrooms to Trina and Brett. I learned early that the love language, particularly for new parents, is that unhurried, peaceful, quiet time alone in a bathroom. Annie and I were sitting on the floor getting ready for the big occasion. Most people would see a baby sitting on the floor just wearing her nappy or a diaper. But for me, it was my niece just sitting there in her underwear, waiting to put her good dress on. She was like any girl getting ready for a special occasion. In fact, she was better than that. She didn't give a damn if her diaper made a bum look good. And like any girl going to her first wedding, she even had a new dress. I'd look at her and we'd giggle. And even when I turned to her and say, "How do I look?" and smack my lips together after I put on my lippy, she giggled. I think everyone should get ready with a 7-month-old sitting beside them. It's good for the soul. It's good for your confidence. They think you look beautiful. I mean, it felt like Tyra Banks had given me a stamp of approval, which was a good thing because I was still single. Yep, I was still single. So let me take no more than 60 seconds, because the story isn't long, of just a quick update of where my love life is at. Do you remember how Robert Redford looked at Barbara Streisand when they were slow dancing in the movie The Way We Were? Or the way Mark Darcy says to Bridget Jones, "I like you just the way you are"? Well, absolutely nothing like that was happening for me. I had taken the plunge into the world of online dating. I was hopeful. I met some really nice guys, and I met some interesting characters. But I have to say, towards the end, the only kind of fun I was getting was sitting with my girlfriends post these dates, regaling them with stories about whether it was Mr. Sweaty or Mr. NS, newly single, or Mr. Holden car. Now, before anyone says anything, I'm not knocking Holden cars. Our family's first car was a Kingswood Holden. But you get my point. I was starting to lose faith. Do I need to go outside Australia? Do I need to maybe bypass border control? When my girlfriends and I would be out at night, we never had any kind of written rules when we were chatting to other people at a bar or anything. But there was kind of one unwritten understanding. It was a little bit of an internal girls' circle code, and it was around the height thing. You know, you stay within 6 inches of your height when you're chatting to a guy. Tall girls need tall guys. And I'm not saying it's an absolute rule, but generally, and from my opinion, I'm a tall girl. I'm looking for a tall guy. And, you know, I have to say, tall guys, they weren't an endangered species. But I got to tell you, on Friday nights, they were rare sightings. My girlfriends probably ranged in height from about 5'4" to around 6 foot. We were in Hong Kong for the rugby sevens. We'd been to the games that day, been out for dinner, and we were at a bar, and it was a fabulous party atmosphere and standing around chatting to a whole pile of people. I look over at the bar, and there is my 5'4" girlfriend chatting to a guy who is easily 6'3". You know, and I nudged my other friend and kind of pointed the head in the same direction. She kind of just rolled her eyes. My girlfriend came over and brought this tall guy with her and introduced us, and we're all chatting. He wandered off at one stage to get a drink, so we pulled her aside. I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "He's too tall for you." And she turned to us and as quick as a whip said, "We're in international waters, my friends. The rules don't apply." All right. So that short interlude of my love life now out of the way, let's get back to the main story, Bindi and Sam's wedding. Here I was sitting with my little glam buddy, and she made me feel good. And I needed to be on point because Bindi and Sam had asked me to be the MC for their wedding, master of ceremonies. Is there a mistress of ceremonies? Well, that takes you into a whole new world. No, I'm not going there. MC. And I was touched. It was a fabulous ceremony, and there was full family and friends on both sides of the aisle. And on our side, we now had 4 generations with Noni down to Annie. I chose not to insert myself in the lineup of speeches espousing marriage wisdom. I mean, considering I was none for one, and I had a very average batting score with my dating life at that point. Okay, so about 9 months later, Bindi and Sam announced that they're expecting. Bindi is pregnant. The whole family is thrilled, and none of us can wait, particularly Aunty Tang, for this new family member to arrive. Towards the end of the pregnancy, Bindi and Sam knew their due date, but it was a date they decided to keep to themselves. So as Bindi's belly grew, so did our excitement for an arrival date that nobody knew. Look, I get it. I can only assume Bindi would have wanted that experience of breaking the news, phoning people the day the baby arrived. So it was finally close to the guesstimate date, and I was planning to go away for the weekend. I was going to Brisbane to catch up with my really close mates. And I said to Bindi, "Look, I'm planning to go away this coming weekend. Should I stay?" And I'm asking her in a way, trying to get out of her if she's going to give it up and tell me whether this is the fateful weekend, is the baby going to arrive? And she gave me nothing. She just said, "Look, you just decide what you just do what you want to do. Your call." And I can remember thinking, well, what am I going to do with that? Like, what would you have done? I mean, I felt kind of momentarily crippled with indecision. So after long deliberation, I decided to go. I went to Brisbane and arrived Friday afternoon and woke on Saturday morning to the message, Ayla Nolene was born. My niece was here. Right on time, apparently. So I land back in Sydney on Sunday night, race to the car park, and I phone my brother-in-law. The window of visiting hours at the hospital is closing. I was up against the clock. And I'm talking to my brother-in-law about whether I can come and visit. I got the green light. We had a game plan. Come straight to the hospital, straight past administration desks. Now, do it in a way that's either ninja-like so that nobody sees you, or walk in like I had just popped out for fresh air. I've been here for the last few hours anyway. Or worst case scenario, run madly like that kid in the movie Love Actually, chasing his 12-year-old love through Heathrow Airport. So I hit the road. Now, this wasn't like the trio racing up the expressway to Gosford Hospital. This was just me, a sense of time urgency and a prayer that there was no traffic on the bridge. Because between me and the hospital at North Sydney was Sydney Harbour Bridge. Now, I love Sydney Harbour Bridge. It is iconic. Millions of people climb it. Millions of people take photographs of it. Even we all enjoyed the fireworks on New Year's Eve from it. Will bridge traffic keep me from seeing my niece? Thankfully, there was no traffic and I was finally at the hospital. I walked in as if I had been there for hours and was simply stepping back in from having fresh air. And then the moment I was out of the eye line of the authorities, I raced down that corridor and straight to Bindi's room. Bindi was in bed and I walked in and I hugged her and I kissed her and I teased her for not telling me that this was the weekend. But I let that drop just as fast because this was an amazing time for our family. My new niece was here and another grandchild. It was so exciting. I hugged and kissed and congratulated Sam. Then I turned and saw Ayla. She had this most gorgeous shock of black hair and the slightest touch of olive complexion. She had her dad's colouring, and it was such a beautiful contrast to our family's fair skin and blue eyes. After I held her for a while, I put her down and I unswaddled her, just like I'd done with Annie. And I looked at this gorgeous little human being, barely 2 days old, as she gave the most gorgeous newborn scrunchy stretch. And I turned to Bindi and Sam and said, "She is perfect." Look, by this stage, it was well after 9 p.m. and I knew I had to go home. As I got in my car and I drove home, I started to cry. I was so happy for Bindi and Sam. I was so happy for our family to have another grandchild. I was thrilled and so happy to have a new niece and happy to be Aunty Tan again. I couldn't wait to get to know this little human. Would she cheer for the Parramatta Eels like Noni? I mean, after all, her middle name was Noni's name. Would she be a fashionista like her mum? Would she like Milo like the rest of us? Or would she be an Ovaltine girl? Doesn't matter. We'd love her just the same. Look, like I'd done with Trina, I wanted to help Bindi as much as I could. I wanted to be that spare set of hands, whether it was to help her around the house or with a meal. I certainly wanted to be that spare set of arms to hold Ayla. It was a job I absolutely loved. And I also wanted to be respectful of the space for Bindi and Sam. I would watch my sisters as they became mums, and it was really special. I can remember one day, Ayla was really sick. She was barely months old and she had a really bad infected throat. And Bindi literally had to nurse her all day. She couldn't put her down. Ayla couldn't swallow. She was dribbling all over Bindi. I think she had to change her top 3 or 4 times. Even when I arrived there towards the end of the day to help, she was still covered in Ayla's saliva. I got to tell you, mums can be pretty spectacular. I'd look at my sisters, both tired from the late nights, cooking, cleaning, maintaining a house, and then eventually returning to work. I'd look at their faces and I'd see my face in theirs sometimes. There was a sameness. And then other times our worlds were totally different. But these 2 little girls connected us. While they had different mums, they had one auntie. And they shared me and they shared my love. So Ayla was here and boy was she determined. She was spunky from the start. She was strong-willed and she was an absolute clinger. I could hold her on my hip, let go of her, and she would hang on for hours. If I was engaged with somebody in another conversation but holding her, she would grab my face and pull it to face her so that she had my undivided attention. She was strong-willed. She had us wrapped around a finger. I actually have a favourite photo of Ayla. She's probably maybe a year old and she's sitting in a royal blue child-size armchair and she looks like she's the CEO of something. We eventually figured it was probably us. She was the perfect addition to our family and I was so excited of the adventures to come with her. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I was also excited that Ayla and Annie now had each other. Not too long from now, we would have a fabulous night out in Sydney, just the three of us. I mean, Annie would probably be maybe 6 or 7, Ayla maybe 4 or 5, dressed in matching tutu dresses bought by Auntie Tan. I think one was pink, one was green. I'm sure if the girls are listening to this, they'll correct me on the colours. We went to this fantastic Thai restaurant in Surrey Hills. I remember us walking in, sitting down, and the patrons smiling and commenting on how pretty the girls looked and looking at me with that kind of knowing look. And in my head, I'm going, no, they're not mine. The menus are passed out, and I'm laughing because I'm thinking these kids can't read menus properly. They can't even read the pricing. And yet Ayla was determined. She knew what she wanted. She wanted prawn money bags. She wanted spring rolls. Annie was a little bit simpler in her taste. She wanted plain rice and sautéed chicken sticks. Anyway, great meal, and we kicked on for ice cream later in the evening. In fact, it was much later than I ever actually admitted to the parents. But that's actually what I wanted to do. Experience a different side of life, show it to them slightly left of centre, and do things that were fun and laugh about for years to come. We arrived home and I put them to bed in the spare queen-size bed. Now, Ayla, she was dead to the world within minutes. In fact, it was a superpower of Ayla. She could sleep through a thunderstorm, probably a bit like her Auntie Tam before the kids arrived. The other one was wired and nearly in a catatonic state. It must have been from the chocolate ice cream. I tried to coax her back to sleep. I must have stroked her head for 2 hours, but I'd realised I'd given her caffeine. It was fabulous fun, time spent with just Ayla, time spent with Ayla and Annie. And when I'd come home after either spending the day with them or the weekend, and I'd come home to my quiet apartment and I'd sit there and I'd wonder, am I ever going to have my own family? Am I ever going to find him? But I was over 40, and I hate this term, the body clock, but it was ticking loudly like Big Ben. Anyway, Ayla was here, and as Noni would say, we were all tickled pink, Annie included. In fact, I can remember one of their first meetings and Annie trying to reach into Ayla's wrapped blanket to hold her hand. It was an amazing start to a beautiful relationship as cousins. And I realised Auntie Tan was now outnumbered. This was going to get interesting. But that's a story for another time. I hope you join me for episode 5.